I'm a teacher, and one day when I was on my way to work, I was ambush spawned by a car driving on the wrong side of the road, and I suffered a head-on collision. Other than a slight shoulder injury and a near concussion, I was okay and I was really lucky. Perhaps I was more lucky than I realized, because the other driver got out of his car, looked at me and said, "You're lucky I wasn't in my truck, or I really would have run you over." So this man, we'll call him Bada the Beast, wasn't in his truck and I was fortunate. Unfortunately, my car was totaled and I had about $400 in the bank. Sometimes life is just like that. This happened only a few months after a kidney stone spawned in me and my health insurance refused to cover the removal surgery. It was a big, nasty fucker too that was threatening to shut down my kidney. So I have to go get dick surgery by a guy whose name is Dr. Johnson. I'll always wonder about that guy because it's a mystery to me what would compel a man named Dr. Johnson to become a dick doctor. Anyways, after the surgery, I'm laid up for about a week high on painkillers and with a stent in my ureter. After a week passes, I have to pull the stent out myself, through my wiener, by a little string. It was not very fun. I'd probably give it 2 stars. Sure, it saved my kidney. But you try pulling a little 4-foot string out of your body from the, sensitive bits. This is not a woe is me story, just a way of saying that sometimes life throws some stuff at you that you couldn't see coming, and as if bad luck has linked AI, it sometimes comes in bunches. Because things often come at you with little warning, you suffer a few unlucky hits, and there's no choice but to Iron Man this existence of ours, the ridiculous and silly hard modes of the Fire Emblem series are a pretty good metaphor for life. This is why the life lesson I always have my students leave with is for them to always play their video games on hard mode. Because I'm a sucker for metaphor and an art bro, I love the absurd difficulties that populate much of the Fire Emblem series. Maniac mode in Path of Radiance, Merciless mode in Shadow Dragon, Lunatic Reverse in New Mystery of the Emblem, and Lunatic Plus in Awakening. I could go on, but I think you get the idea. They're very similar to the $1 million Saints Row 4 pre-order, where the point is to fascinate the casual and tantalize the insane. Briefly consider what Lunatic Plus and Awakening actually is. In it, enemies will randomly have Pass, Vantage Plus, Luna Plus, Hawkeye, Pavise Plus, Aegis Plus, or Counter. This means they can always attack first, always land their attacks, have your damage, double their damage, inflict your damage back on you, or just walk straight past your ass. All of that combined with the Lunatic stat creep, and you have a great recipe for building an army and trusting no one. Or just don't bother doing that part because everyone you recruit is probably already dead. Difficulty settings have been around in Fire Emblem in one form or another since Fire Emblem Gaiden way back on the Famicom, but they didn't become standard in the series until The Binding Blade, which housed a secret unlockable hard mode once you beat the game. Since then, most games have had at least 3 difficulties, sometimes 6, or even up to 8 if you count each classic and casual difficulty in New Mystery of the Emblem. During the Shozukaga era, difficulty settings were sparse, always secret, and did little to alter the gameplay. Paragon mode in Gaiden and Thracia 776 only changed EXP yield, and Clever mode in Genealogy of the Holy War changed some enemy AI but left enemy stats and placement unchanged. There was a very specific, curated gameplay experience that Kaga wanted, and his games didn't deviate from that experience. Even though Thracia 776 was Kaga's only game with consistently good map design, all of his games were memorable and gave you a challenge that felt well designed and well curated, even if the 2 Famicom games are hard to return to now. But for now, this isn't what I'm interested in. I want to look at the insane difficulty settings of recent Fire Emblem and see how they're balanced. As a spoiler, they're not usually balanced at all, but I should be clear about what I mean. The question I'm exploring is not whether or not these modes are beatable. The gods among us have beaten these games in the most ludicrous of conditions with 0% growths. What I'm interested in is how these modes teach casual players to approach the game. God stays in heaven because of Don 151 and Rangor 1997, so we'll be focusing on how these games work for mere mortals with feeble IQs. Let's say you have a guy like Edelgard Simp 69 or Midnight Cowboy or X0X-Man. They enjoy 3 houses and want to give that shiny Maddening mode a try. How does that difficulty train more casual players to play? To me, the ideal fun in Fire Emblem gameplay is when you play fast with a risky strategy and crazy tactics that are safe, but have a visceral joy to them in how insane they look. Those guys I mentioned earlier, Don 151 and Rangor 1997, represent the pinnacle of the Fire Emblem gameplay experience. A well-designed Fire Emblem game should get you to want to play like those guys, to get that rush of fast play, crazy strats, and rewarding thrills. but the games themselves should be good at subtly nudging players to play like that, and let's see how good the hard modes in the series are at teaching fast and dynamic play. I'll start by saying something that I can't confirm, but I feel it in my bones. Some of the series' hard modes, especially Awakening Lunatic Plus, New Mystery of the Emblem Lunatic Reverse, and Three Houses Maddening, were not thoroughly playtested. Instead, I think they were made to sell DLC. If you're a casual player, Nintendo has just what you need to conquer the terrors of these modes. How convenient! For just a small payment of real money, you can rainbow potions and big stat booster. Incredible! Obviously, all hard modes are beatable without DLC, but it sure is convenient that they got you the hookup with new characters and items. But my main concern is how these games teach casual players and new players to play. I'm just gonna blow my load and say that many of the games do a bad job and encourage players to play like it's Turtle City and the party's forever. This is mostly because the main trick that a lot of the games use to increase difficulty is to power creep enemy stats like crazy with little regard to how that changes the motivations for players to play and how that interacts with the game mechanics. Let's look at Shadow Dragon Merciless Chapter 3 for an example of this. The boss, Hyman, is a bad dude who runs with a lot of bad boys. His gang is brutal and beefy, and when you get to him, this is about as well as it goes. A new player will first try Jake and oh, he gets one-rounded. Well, how about Barst? He's pretty good. Oh, he gets one-rounded. Abel has got some pretty good level ups and he dies. You have two choices, Ogma and finish him off with the Devil Axe with Barst. If you watch the Don 1510 0% growth strategy, he rigs a killing edge crit, but if you're a casual player who doesn't know how to RNG manipulate, you'll likely pull this strategy because it's by far the safest. You weave in and out with Ogma until you break Hyman and then gang up on him. If spending 30 turns on early game bosses is your kind of thing, then Shadow Dragon Merciless can hook you up. Speaking of which, there is actually another option to pop in Hyman if you're not a big Ogma fan. You could spend 4 hours of your precious limited lifetime grinding up Cain or Abel or Marth to level 20 on Gazak in Chapter 1. Now that's what I call strategy. Remember that E40 song, Choices? Nope. I think it's safe to say he wasn't talking about Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon Merciless mode. This is the core problem to how many of the most ridiculous Fire Emblem hard modes train players. Turtling and grinding are not only incentivized, but actively rewarded. In Chapter 1 of Shadow Dragon, you need to be aggressive enough to get to the Riss village before the thief, but you can kill the thief immediately, and after he's dead, there's no anti-turtle incentive, and all the incentive in the world is to turtle. If we define optimized play as winning with the least resistance, then early game Shadow Dragon actively encourages players to optimize the fun out of the game by boss abusing. They even put a fort right next to Gomer to make sure it's a little bit more convenient for you. That was really sweet. Look at the first turn of New Mystery of the Emblem Prologue 8 on the Lunatic Reverse 0% growth run. The expert strategy is to turn around and go the other way. When this is not only reliable, but the actual way to approach this map that isn't RNG dependent, this isn't training players to take a dynamic, fun approach to the game. For an aggressively bad example, here's Chapter 2 from Awakening on Lunatic Plus. This is a guide created by Shadow of Chaos 725. And look at how much fun he's having! My personal favorite quote is, "Success in this chapter depends not on your strategic abilities or preparations." That sounds like a fun mechanic in my strategy video game. The hard part of Fire Emblem is that these are games that at least pretend to be fun. They aren't pathologic, where the difficulty being oppressive is part of the point. Yet I still love these increasingly silly and ridiculously hard modes for their sheer lunacy. They're not balanced, probably designed to sell DLC, and also to get the hardcore fanbase to do insane tasks like 0% growths on these ludicrous modes. Maddening in Three Houses doesn't feel like a mode that's meant to be beaten, and it is relentlessly unfair. Infinite Pegasus Knight reinforcements in a route map? Thanks game, I was getting lonely. But every chapter I beat is more invigorating than the last, especially because I've been playing the game in an increasingly fast style, one-turning many chapters. Here's a one-turn of Chapter 12 I formulated with my setup. It's not the most impressive one-turn of this chapter ever, but I was proud of it because I used the tools I had and cracked the game a little bit. Early on, that's not really doable for most casual players like me, and it's a problem with a lot of early game hard modes. I love these modes because of how dumb they are, but this is a video titled How Fire Emblem Balances Hard Mode, so I might as well come up with some ideas. Most of the time, this is the approach that intelligent systems takes to increase difficulty, pure stat inflation. or pumping enemies full of horrifying skills. I don't think I need to address Lunatic Plus again, but this is also the case in Three Houses, where enemies are big buff with raw stats, but are also coming at you with Death Blow, Lance Prowess 5, Poison Strike, and the Kitchen Sink. The most interesting trick they've ever pulled is removing the weapon triangle in Radiant Dawn hard mode. For many players, this will radically change their approach to the game and how good some characters are, especially early on. Of course, hard mode in Radiant Dawn also takes away your ability to see enemy ranges. That's just petty. This has me thinking that Fire Emblem should try other mechanical changes, like creating a hard mode where, along with increased stats, all attacks hit and criticals are disabled. It would at the very least be an interesting twist on approaches we often have to Fire Emblem. The game should also just include a 0% growth option out of the box. I think most importantly, enemy stats should be carefully adjusted based on map objective. Route maps should have slightly weaker enemies to encourage you to move out into enemy range, while kill boss maps should have stronger enemies to encourage players to barrel towards the boss as quickly as possible. We can see why this difference matters in chapters 12 and 14 in Three Houses Blue Lions. In chapter 12, I rush towards Edelgard and kill her instantly. The objective incentivizes me to move fast and take advantage of all my tools. Chapter 14 is a miserable slog of a route map, where powerful enemies relentlessly bear down on you. Welcome to Turtletown, population booty bopper. Also, the games should avoid pumping up enemy avoid, particularly bosses, and especially bosses on thrones and gates. How many people actually enjoy fighting Henning in the Binding Blade or Hyman? I can't imagine it's too many. Anyway, these are just some ideas to improve the balance of Fire Emblem hard mode, but as much as I know a lot of the hard modes are imbalanced or downright broken, I can't help but love them. I'm still in favor of better balance, especially early game, and I do want to see the series experiment with mechanical changes at different difficulty levels, but I must go, and before I leave, I'd like to say, fuck that guy that hit me, I'm gonna take his damn truck in court. See you guys next time.